Good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is International News Desk. We'll bring you up-to-the-minute news to keep you informed. Starting the news with Boris Johnson bows out as United Kingdom's Prime Minister Liz Truss to be appointed by Queen. A large military raid by Israeli forces leaves one Palestinian dead. After days of heavy downpour, India's tech hub Bengaluru deluged Russia to purchase Korean artillery shells, rockets, and rescue crews search for survivors following deadly quake in China. The United Kingdom's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has finally left his Downing Street office before heading to Scotland to officially offer his resignation to Queen Elizabeth II. The British leader, who declared his intention to leave 2 months ago, is anticipated to meet with the Queen on Tuesday at her Balmoral estate to start the transfer of power to Liz Truss. On Monday, Truss, who was named leader of the ruling Conservative Party, will be appointed Prime Minister during her own audience with the Queen a short time later. Johnson said his strategies had given the country the economic strength to assist people weather the energy crisis before he signed off with his typical bluster, speaking outside number 10 Downing Street. Truss, 47, takes office a day after the Conservative Party's 172,000 members elected her to lead their party. She made her first speech as leader of a nation of 67 million people anxious about rising energy bills and a looming winter of recession and labor unrest. Those problems have lingered for the past 2 months since Johnson had no leverage to make important policy decisions after declaring his plan to step down. Truss promised to deliver on the economy, the energy crisis, and the overstressed healthcare system, though she gave few details on her policies while speaking to Conservative Party members on Monday. The International Monetary Fund data says Britain is being hit harder than any other Western European country by massive fuel prices rises. In 2021, a typical United Kingdom household paid around $1,400 a year for energy. By early next year, an average bill could hit $7,600, according to reports. The new Prime Minister promised on Sunday to reveal her strategies for tackling the cost of living crisis within a week. On the northern occupied West Bank city of Jenin, Israeli forces have shot and killed a Palestinian man during a large military attack. On Tuesday, the Palestinian Ministry of Health recognized the man as 29-year-old Mohammed Sabane, whose death was announced just before 5 a.m. local time, 2 o'clock GMT. Not more than 16 other Palestinians were wounded as a result of Israeli live fire and shrapnel, according to the ministry. On Tuesday, lots of Israeli military jeeps raided Jenin just after midnight. In the city's eastern Al-Madris area, the army raided a huge residential building where the family of Raed Hazem, who carried out the shooting in Tel Aviv in April, killing 3, lived. Hazem was killed by Israeli police at the scene of the shooting. Israeli snipers closed off roads, positioned themselves on rooftops, and mosque emptied the building of 29 apartments and blew up Hazem's flat. The Israeli army shared images of the explosion. Hazem's neighbors appealed to Israel's High Court to stop the demolition order, but the appeal was rejected in May. Israel frequently carries out retaliatory demolitions of the homes of Palestinians who have carried out attacks against Israelis. Human rights organizations and the United Nations Special Rapporteur have called the practice collective punishment. Confrontations with Palestinian youth throwing rocks as well as armed clashes with Palestinian fighters broke out during the Israeli attack, which lasted for many hours. The Israeli army said that Palestinian fighters had attacked its forces and that the Israeli soldiers responded with riot dispersal means and live fire. The Israeli forces attacked numerous other Palestinian towns, villages, and refugee camps on Tuesday. According to prisoners groups, at least 16 Palestinian males Israeli forces arrested from across the occupied West Bank by Tuesday morning, including 8 in Hebron, with the rest from Nablus, Ramallah, and Bethlehem. Since the beginning of the year, the Israeli army has killed over 140 Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which Israel illegally occupies. 19 people have also been killed in attacks carried out by Palestinians in Israel and the occupied West Bank in 2022. Now, life has been interrupted for several in the southern Indian city of Bengaluru after 2 days of torrential rain set off long traffic snares, widespread power cuts and heavy floods that swept into homes and flooded roads. Numerous parts of the city, called India's tech capital, were deluged for a second day on Tuesday as more rain fell in an unusual wet monsoon season. The southern metropolis of about 8.5 million in Karnataka state rumbled in the 1990s and is home to many outsourcing and software companies in the back office of the world. But the city's companies have complained that infrastructure development has not kept up with perennial traffic jams and unplanned construction on the dried-up beds of lakes, leading to recurrent flooding even after moderate rainfall. Authorities on Monday deployed rubber ships to ferry people around, with tractors being used to transport travelers from the airport. The Outer Ring Road Companies Association, ORRCA, the umbrella group for the IT sector, counseled employees to work from home while several schools and colleges were closed. Authorities have cautioned of disruptions to the water supply. Reports said some residents were struggling to empty out flooded basements and shops. Boats were deployed to rescue people submerged in flood waters. The state chief minister said some areas in the city saw 150% more rain than normal in the first week of September, according to reports. Bengaluru's water supply company said on Monday it will halt the supply of water to over 50 areas in the city for 2 days after a pumping station that brings in water from 100 kilometers 60 miles away was flooded. On Monday, the Bangalore urban district, which is home to most of the city's offices, received 79.2 millimeter, 3.1 inches of rain, according to data from the India Meteorological Department, IMD. The IMD said the south of the Indian Peninsula will continually see heavy and isolated rainfall over the next 5 years. According to newly declassified intelligence reports from the United States, Russia is buying millions of artillery shells and rockets from North Korea. The reports provided less detail on the precise weaponry involved or the timing or size of the shipments. Beyond short-range rockets and artillery shells, Russia was likely to buy additional North Korean equipment in future, the paper said, citing an unnamed U.S. official. Russia's step to buy weaponry from North Korea, an isolated state subject to international sanction over its nuclear weapons program, demonstrates that the Russian military remains to suffer from severe supply shortages in Ukraine due to export controls and sanctions, the report said, citing a U.S. official who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Russia has strengthened bonds with countries including North Korea and Iran since its invasion of Ukraine in February, drew international condemnation and sanctions that have made it harder to keep its military supplied with weapons and equipment. Before now, the U.S. said Moscow has been buying drones for Iran, which has not joined the condemnation of Russia, instead blaming NATO's extension in Eastern Europe as the root reason of the conflict. In July, Ukraine cut ties with North Korea after it appeared Pyongyang had joined Russia and Syria to recognize the independence of two self-proclaimed republics in eastern Ukraine. Rescue efforts are ongoing following a 6.8 magnitude earthquake that killed closely 65 people and left hundreds stuck or missing in China's southern western Sichuan province. On Tuesday, rescuers searched through debris in remote villages to find survivors and those missing after the earthquake caused landslides and shook buildings as far away as the provincial capital Chengdu, 200 kilometers, 125 miles from the epicenter. Nearly 250 people are being treated for injuries from the disaster, with dozens severely wounded. The earthquake on Monday struck the province's mountainous Luding County, an area that sits on the edge of the Tibetan Plateau, where tectonic plates meet and that is regularly hit by earthquakes. The local meteorological department has warned that Luding County will also experience rain for 3 days, possibly hindering rescue efforts. China's state-run Global Times news outlet reported on Tuesday that approximately 50,000 people have been relocated following the earthquake. The China Earthquake Network Center recorded at least 10 aftershocks as of 7 a.m. local time. Tents have been created to offer shelter for those forced to move from homes rendered dangerous by the earthquake. Report says Tuesday, with 243 houses collapsed and 13,010 had damage. Rescuers are working to return telecommunication services, power and water utilities, as well as distributing food supply to residents. The quake cut power to several towns, while a number of highways collapsed and 7 small to mid-sized hydropower stations suffered damage. Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered all-out rescue efforts, including the deployment of the People's Liberation Army. According to reports, over 6,500 emergency workers have been sent to take part in the search and rescue operations. There are more stories. Many evacuated as powerful typhoon barrels across South Korea. The most powerful typhoon to hit South Korea in years has battered its southern region, dumping almost a meter 3 feet of rain, scattering roads and bringing down power lines after dozens of people were evacuated to safe ground. Typhoon Hinnamnor covered the resort island of Jeju and made landfall in the country's south close to the port of Busan early on Tuesday. Authorities said with heavy rain and strong wind likely to continue throughout the day. In August, the storm followed record rain around the capital Seoul that caused severe flooding. Nearly 14 people were killed. Prime Minister Han Dong-soo called for evacuations in areas susceptible to flooding, saying the quake could end up being a historically strong typhoon that we never experienced before. Since Sunday, over 94 centimeters, 37 inches of rain has fallen in central Jeju, where winds peaked at 155 kilometers per hour, 96 miles per hour. Some 20,000 homes were left without electricity in southern districts as the wind brought down power cables. Nearly 3,463 people had been evacuated as of Tuesday morning, and officials were advising or ordering 14,000 more people to leave their homes. President Yoon Suk-yeol convened response meetings and urged officials to take precautions until the typhoon had completely gone, his spokesperson said. Above 600 schools were closed or moved classes online, while hundreds of flights and lots of ferry services were cancelled and fishing boats remained in ports. Meteorologists said the typhoon was moving northeast towards the sea with winds of up to 144 kilometers per hour and was projected to pass about 400 kilometers northwest of the Japanese island of Hokkaido. Leader Kim Jong-un, during governing meetings, had issued vague detailed tasks to advance the country's disaster response capacity, but did not elaborate on the plans. Also, he discussed releasing water from a dam near its border with South Korea, according to reports. Seoul has continually urged North Korea to give notice before releasing water from the dam because of the danger of flooding downstream. Ahead of the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA report, Zelensky cautions of radiation catastrophe. Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukrainian president, has warned of a close radiation catastrophe as a fire forced the shutdown of the last working reactor at the Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant hours before the United Nations atomic watchdog were set to brief the Security Council on its assessment of the situation at site. Ukraine and Russia have each accused the other of risking disaster by shelling near the plant, which was seized by Russian troops soon after they started their attack of Ukraine on February 24th. According to a statement from the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA, the reactor was the last of Zaporizhzhia 6 reactors still in operation after shelling disengaged reactor number 5 on Saturday. The United Nations Nuclear Agency said Ukraine had said a backup power line was destroyed in fire, but the connection will be restored once the flames had been quenched. While the plant is occupied by Russian, Ukrainian civilians remain responsible for the operations of the facility, the biggest in Europe. A secure off-site power plant for the grid and backup power supply systems are vital for guaranteeing nuclear safety, the IAEA added. An International Atomic Energy Agency expert on the roof of a building outside the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Ukraine, a 14-strong team from the IAEA visited Zaporizhzhia last week, with the agency's chief Rafael Grossi saying the site had been damaged in fighting. Today, Grossi released a report on the mission's findings and will brief the United Nations Security Council at an open meeting at 7 o'clock GMT. The meeting was called by Russia in light of what he said were efforts by Ukraine to derail the IAEA visit to the Zaporizhia. In the shores of Africa, opposition electoral commission battle words over results in Angolan election. In Angola, the major opposition party, National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, UNITA, has urged the Constitutional Court to hear its appeals and nullify the announced election results that gave victory to President João Lourenço of the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA. Adalberto Costa Jr., chairman and presidential candidate of UNITA, on Monday said the differences of over 500,000 votes changed the official results. The Angolan National Electoral Commission, CNE, in reaction to the appeal, cautioned the Constitutional Court to discard the petition lodged by the UNITA, Bloco Democrático, and the Casa C coalition contesting the official results of the elections. Lucas Quilondo, spokesman for the CNE, said his team had done their job properly. Out of the 16 electoral commissioners, 4 did not sign off on the final results, raising questions about the credibility of the polls. Still on the news, not less than 35 civilians murdered in Burkina Faso improvised explosive device IED convoy blast. According to the regional governor, no less than 35 civilians have been killed as a convoy carrying supplies in Burkina Faso's edgy northern region hit an improvised explosive device, IED. The explosion, which wounded 37 others, happened as the military-escorted convoy moved along the road from Burzanga to Djibo on Monday, said Rodolphe Sorgo, the governor of the northeastern Sahel region, which borders Mali and Niger. The tri-border area has been central to an increasing security crisis in the wider region over the last 10 years and has seen growing attacks by groups connected to Al-Qaeda and ISIS following military takeovers in Mali and Burkina Faso in May 2021 and January 2022, respectively. The explosion follows a thread of raids on major roads leading to the region's key cities, Dori and Djibo. Nearly 15 soldiers were murdered in the area by a double IED blast in early August. In June, at least 86 civilians were killed by armed attackers in the northern town of Setanga. Burkina Faso's military rulers have registered fighting armed groups in the northern and eastern regions of the country, a top priority, with the army saying it has undertaken offensive actions and also introduced a process of dialogue with shore armed groups through religious and local leaders. However, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, ACLAD, has documented more attacks this year in Burkina Faso than in Niger or Mali, where the security crisis was initially stoked by an ethnic separatist movement in the north in 2012, followed by the rise of numerous armed groups in the central border region. Reports said military leaders in Mali and Burkina Faso have agreed to reinforce their military partnership to fight armed groups on Sunday, a step that followed the extraction of French troops from Mali, which ended in August, and Mali's withdrawal from the regional G5 Sahel Joint Force, which went into effect at the end of June. An intermediary from the Economic Community of West African states and the key regional bloc had earlier reported that authorities in Burkina Faso control just 60% of the country of 20 million people's territory. The Norwegian Refugee Council has said almost 1 in 10 people in Burkina Faso have been displaced by conflict and severe food insecurity, has almost double equated with 2021 as fields and livestock are abandoned. And finally, occupation of schools by refugees interrupts start of school year in Democratic Republic of Congo. On Monday, the beginning of a fresh school year was interrupted in an area of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo because of the occupation of numerous schools by war-displaced people, reports said. In Rushuru, displaced people and their children held sticks in the early morning, blocking the way of school children, escorted by their parents who were trying to reach the classroom transformed for a few months into homes for those who fled the war. President Felix Tshisekedi and all his deputies are here because they have studied. We ask that Bunagana and our villages be liberated so that our children can also go back to school. Elizabeth, a leader of the displaced people living in a stadium housing, more than 553 households protested, according to report. Luke Bakole Nyenge, military administrator of Rushuru territory, acknowledged, however, that it is difficult for the displaced to clear the classrooms during the day. The Congolese army and peacekeepers in Rushuru are battling the rebels of M23 for March 23 movement. M23, a former rebellion defeated in 2013 that reappeared late last year, which Kinshasa accuses of being driven and backed by neighboring Rwanda. The Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has been beleaguered by violence for closely 30 years due to the presence of hundreds of armed groups of different sizes. To refresh in our memories, Boris Johnson bows out as United Kingdom's Prime Minister. Liz Truss to be appointed by Queen. A large military raid by Israeli forces leaves one Palestinian dead. After days of heavy downpour, India's tech hub Bengaluru deluged, and Russia to purchase Korean artillery shells and rockets, and rescue crews search for survivors following deadly quake in China. And that's all for International News Desk this evening. Be mindful, be grateful, be positive, be true, be kind. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Have a good evening.